Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob, your griot, here to tell you a story. So this morning I read from my novel, um, and I was just wondering what you thought of it. And I'm going to do more of that. Yeah? So, you know, try and do two and do one where I just read, talk and read and talk and read and talk and see what you get from that. And I was just talking to someone, um, but I didn't put it live on the thing because it was like a couples counseling. Anyway, so guys, you know, about 3 years ago, 2 years, 2.5 years ago, I started talking about the big splat. And I have been talking about the rearrangement of humanity from the big, that's what Dreamy Dreamland has been about. Hey, wake up, right? Wake up. And and when I didn't have the kind of access to the internet, I was at school or at other places that had Wi-Fi. My connection to you guys seemed to be catch as catch can. And anyway, but if you didn't think with the advent in 2019 of, or 2015 with Donnie Chump coming down the escalator, Carrot Head Boy, with the arranged marriage, um, you know, um, and then, it was pretty obvious that he was going to be president because the only person who could lose to Donnie Chump was Hillary Clinton. And the Democrats, Bernie would have chewed Donnie a new one, right? And then in 2020, I would have loved to see Tassie Gabbard go up against him in that nice white suit. Oh, she would have chewed him alive. She wouldn't know what to. He wouldn't know what to do. He would go into a fetal position and go, "Mommy." So and to think that Donald Trump is anything other than a poster boy. For 10 years, he was in training, working for General Electric. Just like Ronald Reagan, you know, who you know was on a 20 team Moorhacks and GE Theater, and then Donnie, and so that was Ronnie's training to be governor, and then he went from being liberal, first almost being socialist. He was the president of the Movie Actors Guild, right, which was a pretty socialist crew in the 30s and 40s, and then he moved on to. It was interesting. All the guys who were in the war movies, like the Duke and Ronald Reagan, and a few others, they never served in the military. Where Jimmy Stewart, he flew missions over Berlin in a B-17, and there were a number of guys. I mean, Richard Nixon, he was getting shot at, not Mr. Kennedy. He was a playboy in the back rivers in his PT boat, and then he get run over. He was going to visit the girls, and Japanese destroyer just ran him right over. Didn't even see him. Neither of them were running with lights. So you just have to look at this, gang. It's real obvious, right? And then, so that really messed, good old Jack was the not the youngest, but he was the sibling. He was the runt of the litter. Joe was the star. He was going to be president, but he died. Someone murdered him. He was trying to be a hero, and his plane blew up, and that was the end of Joe. And Joe Sr. was heartbroken, right? So he had to settle for Jack. And Jack was on every drug you could imagine because he was really messed up. Brought back to America, still in the Navy. So he worked for Forrestal. He knew Forrestal, who was the first Secretary of the Defense, right? And was there when they reordered. We went from the War Department, which at least they were honest, to the Defense Department. And, that's when we became imperial, right? And we used our military force, just like the Romans, all over the place. We have more than 300 gigantic, like Bagram in Afghanistan, biggest, military base. It was, hundreds of thousands of people on it. And we closed it down in the middle of the night. And then a month later, we sneak out of Afghanistan at the stupid airport downtown Kabul, right? So it was like it was scripted, Donnie set it up. Jojo knocked it down, right? Because we'd still be there, right? And I mean, we were keeping the lid on the pot in Afghanistan with 2,500 guys, a bunch of drones, and a bunch of A-10s at Bagram. That's all it took, right? And we could have kept the status quo, but we left, leaving millions of women to be, we have no honor. To think we're exemplary. And we are, since the revolution, we have been chumps. The English got tired of paying the bills. So they fostered, a thing that the rich boys, and that's our founding fathers were the rich boys, And why is America what it is? It's just look at the pedigree of where it came from. We didn't have a constitution. We had the revolution. And then it wasn't until Hayes Rebellion, because the only way Washington could get guys to fight was he promised them land, because they weren't. They were just tenement farmers. They went out there with his army guys. Come on, you got to fight. Fuck you, we're not going to do that. And so they said, listen, if you fight, we'll give you this farm. So they did, and they won, allegedly won. The English just, English won every battle and then left the field, right? Meaning that was their plan. And then they came back 18 years later, War of 1812, and basically ate their, the founding fathers were doddering old farts. They hung out, the English hung out on the islands and then came straight up the Potomac and burned D.C. to the ground. Right? And then rebuilt it as a satanic instrument. I mean, go look at how the city is laid out, and what's the District of Columbia mean? Why will it never be a state? DC has more population than the whole state of Alaska. They don't even have a congressman, right? So these are just things to think about. And so my writing, basically stated that. So A.W. watched it, and not a single one gave a thumbs up. Fish was the only one that said, hey, I'm here. I don't even think she said she's here. She said, hey, gang. So if that's, your take on life, right? Just to, mosey on through, maybe the next 20 years, you think the last 20 years were wild and crazy? Think what you were doing in, 1999. Remember Prince, party like it's 1999. I mean, he was saying it for a reason, because after that, 2 years, nothing was the same. And then once 2012 happened, which was supposed to be the end of the world, end of my calendar. No, it's just the beginning of the Aquarian age. And so we are, the more we fight, love's co-creation, unconditional love. So I've been hanging out in 3 churches, in the last 2 months, right? The Ku Klux Klan Southern Baptist Church. And they're very nice people, right? They are. They're not evil. They're not terrible. But their world view is that we're all white, and anything that, we can't give anything to anybody who's not white, because then it's taken away from us. Well, they don't even believe that. They're just being told that, right? So that's part of the, the people who believe whatever JoJo says or what Donnie Chump says. They are just chumps. They're both chumps, because both those guys work for the same unipolar transnational, not even American, transnational oligarchy, right? And they're going for the one world order, And go watch the movie because I view everything in movies. A good example of what's going on politically is the movie Gangs of New York, because that's all we got right now. You know, the Gangs of New York. You know, and but we have lots of weapons that those guys didn't have, and there is going to be a nuclear exchange, but that nuclear exchange is going to be with morons who back Donnie Trump and morons who back. I mean, just looking at what's his name called him, Stepford wife Biden. It's like just unbelievable. You know, Jimmy Dore he goes after Biden like nobody's business, which is okay. That's his like bread and butter, and that's what he's doing.
The company was issued federal subpoenas by both the securities. This weird shape-shifting device is quickly becoming the most popular Father's Day gift of 2022. It replaces the company was issued federal subpoenas by both the Securities Exchange Commission and the grand jury. Bad. Trump, who's the chairman of Trump Technology Group, was one of 6 board members removed on June 8th. That's what the records show. So the SEC served Trump Media and Technology Group with a subpoena on June 27th, again, according to a filing. Trump's media company owns Truth Social. We know what that is. 4 days later, follow with me here, on July 1st, a grand jury in the Southern District of New York also handed the company another federal subpoena, an action that typically means a potential criminal investigation is in progress. And the investigations appear to be related to a proposed merger between Trump's media company.
All right, Genesis chapter 24. We left off at verse 54.
So
the context is, remember, Rebekah's family granted the servant Eliezer.
This is the Ku Klux
they
Klan,
granted his desire and his wish
Baptist.
to take their
it's
daughter
Rebecca
Rebekah from their family
There is no
and take him on a journey to meet Isaac. Recalling, fresh review again, Isaac.
Israel's military has admitted for the first time that Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh was likely killed by Israeli gunfire. The Israel Defense Forces released a report on Monday.
She was wearing body armor, a helmet that plastered all over it.
She was killed in May while she was covering an Israeli military operation in the West Bank. The IDF says there's a high possibility they are responsible. They don't, though, intend to pursue criminal charges against the soldier.
They were responsible, but they're not going to.
In a statement, the military said the soldiers did not know they were firing at the press and thought they were firing back at militants. Evidence, though, from a CNN investigation in May revealed there was no active combat or Palestinian militants near.
They just shot her in the head.
Standing. She was also wearing a vest identifying her as press, both on her front and on her back. Abu Akleh's family
and the helmet
the IDF
said press,
saying it, quote, tried to obscure the truth and avoid responsibility, and now they're calling for an independent U.S. investigation.
Of course, we're not going to do it because,
Abu Akleh's niece, Lena Abu Akleh. Lena, thank you so much for being with us this morning, and I'm so sorry for what you and your family have gone through here. How are you and your family reacting to this news?
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. This video is the next in a series looking at the financial implications of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on the global economy. And in today's episode, I want to talk about the Russian airline industry. As you'll be aware, a number of sanctions were brought in against Russia following the invasion. And two of the most important from the airline perspective were that Airbus and Boeing, who are the 2 biggest aircraft manufacturers in the world, both came out and stated that they would no longer support any of the Russian fleet. So that means that they wouldn't be able to buy any parts, they wouldn't be able to update any of the software, and they would no longer be able to access any of the technical expertise. And this is a major problem when you're talking about airlines, because the industry is highly regulated. There is a lot of certification. And so to keep flying planes, you need to make sure that they are fully up to date, they're fully operational. operational and they meet with all of the manufacturers' guidelines. So this was a major problem for Russia, and it's now starting to unfold. So in today's video, we'll have a look at the sanctions that were imposed. We'll talk about the implications of those sanctions. We'll then have a look at the fleet of airlines that are in existence.
97% of people still don't know Congress approved these new $0 health insurance cards.
I've said this in the past. The war in Ukraine is not just a military battle. It's also a battle of wits, conflict where both sides are using their intelligence and resources to outsmart the other. A new report has shed some interesting light on this. It claims that Ukrainian hackers are honey-trapping Russian troops and luring them into sharing details of their whereabouts. How are they doing this? Through Facebook. Here's a report.
Every war is fought on multiple fronts. It involves not just the use of force, but also unconventional tactics. Chief among them is honey trapping, a form of state espionage aimed at getting crucial information out by luring the enemy into romantic relationships. In the war between Russia and Ukraine, both sides seems to be excelling at it. According to a new report, Ukrainian hackers are creating fake Facebook profiles in order to lure Russian troops into sharing their locations. How exactly do they do this? 4 simple steps. First, they create fake profile groups. Third, they trick them into sending photos and personal details. Fourth, they use these details to geolocate the troops on ground. So, how has the trick helped the Ukrainians so far? According to the report, the most noticeable honey-trapping feat was the bombing of a Russian base in Popasna, a quaint city in the Luhansk region. On August 14th, the Ukrainians blew up a military base here, which apparently belonged to the Wagner Group. How was this done? By catfishing and spying on a Russian war correspondent. According to the report, the correspondent had recently visited the base. He had then uploaded a photo of a signboard which revealed the address of the nearest bomb shelter. Ukrainian hackers who had befriended the correspondent online used the photo to geolocate the base. The Ukrainians may have tasted success, but the Russians aren't far behind. Just last week, there were reports on how a Russian spy charmed her way into the NATO command. The spy in question posed as a socialite jeweler and befriended NATO employees over brunches. There's no data on how much information she was able to extract. This game of cat and mouse has been underway for quite some time. And it only goes on to reveal that this war may not end anytime soon. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
WION is now available in
Jimmy
your
Carrey
country.
when he
Download the app now and get all the news on the move.
Here's a good one.
They don't want you to know this.
Guys, this insurance company, Auto, is the real deal.
The first thing the young telegraph operator noticed was the small black couch. This was 1935, and Sigmund Freud, who was still alive, had made the psychiatrist's couch a symbol of psychoanalysis and therapy. But the young man hadn't come to the office to see it. He was there to see the most famous psychic in the country, Edgar Cayce. Cayce entered the room, soft-spoken and well-dressed, and he explained that he, not the young man. So Cayce kicked off his shoes, lay back, and put himself in. And after a few minutes, Cayce began to whisper all sorts of things about the past, present, and the future. It was then that the young man realized that Cayce wasn't just making predictions about his life. He was making predictions about everyone, events that were to happen all over the world. And since then, Edgar Cayce has been called the Sleeping Prophet. Let's find out why. Australia will lose nearly 25% of its land due to coastal flooding. The Adelaide area, China, will be pushed inland hundreds of miles back.
What number was Obama?
44.
He did it again!
And on January 1st, 1945, Cayce said he would be buried in 4 days. His wife didn't like this prediction.
I'm afraid to ask what happened.
He died of a stroke 3 days later and was buried in his hometown just as he predicted. But the sleeping prophet's most disturbing predictions are yet to come. According to Casey, the Earth is in for a catastrophe that will reshape continents and rewrite borders around the world. In 1936, Edgar Casey predicted that the world would undergo a pole shift between 16 and 20 degrees. And this would happen when both Mount Etna in Italy and Mount Pelée in Martinique erupt together. When that happens, we'll have 90 days to evacuate the coastlines.
Are those volcanoes still active?
Oh, they are. Mount Etna just erupted a few months ago, and scientists at Mount Pelée said that the seismic activity there is above baseline.
No.
Now, if the poles do shift, as Edgar Casey predicts, the world map is going to look very different. Africa will be divided into 3 parts. The Nile will widen, and a brand new waterway will split the continent. As the Red Sea grows, Cairo will eventually disappear into the sea. Asia is already very seismic and will suffer the most dramatic changes. Land will be covered from the Philippines to Japan by the ocean. As the Pacific plate shifts, the islands of Japan will sink, with only a few small islands. Taiwan and most of Korea will be completely lost to the sea. The entire coast of China will be pushed inland hundreds of miles. The population of India will be told not to seek higher ground within the interior of the country due to buckling of the land. Instead, they'll have to head to the Himalayas. The high mountains of Tibet and Nepal will provide refuge. Antarctica will no longer be covered in ice, but will once again become fertile and green. Australia will lose nearly 25% of its land due to coastal flooding. The Adelaide area will become a new sea. The Simpson and Gibson deserts will become fertile farming land. New Zealand will actually grow in size and will once again connect to mainland Australia. And New Zealand will ultimately become one of the safest areas in the New World.
Lucky Kiwis.
Europe will suffer. Most of Northern Europe will simply be gone, sunk into the sea as the tectonic plate underneath it collapses. Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark disappear, eventually becoming hundreds of small islands. Most of the UK, from Scotland to the English Channel, will disappear into the ocean, but several small islands will remain. London and Birmingham will actually survive, but not as cities, as islands. Ireland will disappear completely except for land at high elevation. Russia will be separated from Europe by an entirely new sea when the Caspian, Black, Kara, and Baltic seas combine. The new sea will stretch all the way to Siberia. Russia's climate will remain intact, leaving Russia to supply most of Europe's food.
Putin is going to be king of the world.
You mean he isn't already?
You make a good point.
In Canada, most of the coastline will be pushed in by 200 miles. Regions in Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and areas of Alberta will become the refugee survival center of Canada. As the North American plate buckles, the new islands of California will be created with almost 150 separate islands. The West Coast will recede east toward Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. The Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence will join and continue from the Mississippi River all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. All coastal areas from Maine to Florida will be taken over by water and pushed inland for miles. Most of the coastal areas of Mexico will be flooded. The California Baja coast will ultimately become a series of islands. Billions of people will be displaced by this cataclysm. Billions more will be killed.
Well, that was cheerful.
Sorry about that.
When is this pole shift supposed to happen?
Well, Casey said 1998.
Oh, we're fine.
Yeah, but NASA has detected a slight pole shift that could be a concern.
When did they detect the shift?
1998.
Yeah, damn it.
Wow, haha.
Yes. So anyway, things aren't as they seem to be, gang. And no one seems to want to watch this channel. So I'll keep doing what I'm doing because that's what I've been told to do. So, I hope all of you who watch it enjoy it. I was looking for some kind of insight from you on what I said this morning. I'm going to do that again tomorrow. I will probably do it in the morning. Read and make comments and see what you guys have to say. And I look forward to hearing from you. And anyone wants to send something to PayPal, it works. Thank you for the 2 people who sent me something. And the rest of you, hey, mean, as it becomes financially difficult for me, it's still not emotionally, psychically, or physically difficult. You know, I still live like a millionaire on nothing. You know, it used to be $1,000, and now it went to $700. Now it was at $400, and now it's getting close to. Like I said, I spent half of my $400 on what I spent last year, $30. So, you know, the thing about events, physical events, they're illusions. And when you have nothing, you got nothing to lose, right? And I am very grateful for what little I do have. And Mr. Bunny, my forest, you know, and it always works out for me because I'm always in service to love's co-creation, right? My life is not about me. It's about the we and me. It's about all my relations. All the furred, feathered, skinned, and scaled, warm and cold-blooded relations. And all the other creatures, like my man cave, it's covered in gunk. You know, I live in like what is known as a swamp cooler, and you know, my hot outside. You know, but it doesn't get. You know, last week it was sunny, and in Johnson City it was 90-something degrees. Right, when I got up the hill to my forest, it was 78 degrees. When I went down into the holler, it was 68 degrees. So I have no air conditioning, no electricity, and yet it's almost 30 degrees cooler. Cave, it was another 10 degrees cooler. It was now 68 inside. Right? And then as the outside, it stayed kind of where it was. Right? It stayed 68. I can be comfortable. In the winter, when it's like, you know, below zero, it's, 34 degrees in the man cave without any heat whatsoever. And I have that much insulation. So anyway, I'm fine. My endocrinologist says I'm the healthiest dead guy he knows, but at least I'm healthy. So I love you guys. So come on, let's have some thumbs up. Let's have some comments. Let's have something, you know. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And forgive us our trespasses. Forgive us our trespasses. Forgive us our trespasses. Become self-aware. Right? Okay. Talk to you guys later.